Hi everyone, welcome to the Atheist Viewpoint. I'm Ellen Johnson. I'm the president of American Atheists, and you know my co-host Dennis Horowitz.
Can I just say one thing, Ellen? But by the time this show is run, it will be my 4th anniversary of this being on this show.
That's wonderful.
And
it's been wonderful.
I can't think of a better person to share this whole event with than our guest,
Dr. Massimo Pigliucci. And we've done 2 shows already with Dr. Pigliucci. They've been fascinating. We could stay here all day and do these shows. He is a fascinating person. He's the author of Denying Evolution, Creationism, Scientism, and the Nature of Science. It's a fascinating book. It's a wonderful approach to the study. Dennis and I loved it very much, and we've seen a lot of these books. And we recommend it highly.
Yes, absolutely.
Let me tell you a little bit about our guest. Dr. Pigliucci is a professor of ecology and evolution at the State University of New York at Stony Brook. He holds 3 doctorates, one in genetics, botany, and one in philosophy. He has received the Dobzhansky.
That's right.
I can't.
3 shows in a row, folks.
I keep trying. That prize from the Society for the Study of Evolution, and he is a 3 times winner of the Oak Ridge National Laboratories Science Alliance Faculty Research Award. We love scientists. He's a fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science and the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of the Paranormal. He's a widely published author and lecturer. His other books are Phenotypic Integration, Making Sense of Evolution, and Tales of the Rational. And we'll put Dr. Pigliucci's web address at the end of this program if you're interested in looking at these books or reading these books. We'll tell you how to get them.
Weren't you the original bass player for Motley Crue?
No.
No, okay.
But it's a nice try.
Okay, I was just...
His interests also include philosophy, the philosophy of science, in particular the conceptual and critical analyses of fundamental ideas of evolutionary theory. He's interested in experimenting with new methods of teaching both graduate and undergraduate classes, new methods of teaching, and is involved in outreach activities that include public lectures and writing. He maintains a regular blog. Again, the blog URL is
RationallySpeaking.org.
RationallySpeaking.org. He's also, of course, an atheist. Welcome again back to the show, Dr. Pigliucci.
My pleasure.
Boy, scientists are not only atheists, but scientists are getting such a bad rap. And, you know, we think that they're the best people around, some of the most helpful people to society, except, according to a man named Stanley Fish.
Yes.
Stanley Fish is not too happy about atheists or the so-called new atheists. He had an article published in the New York Times in which he highly criticized the new atheists. I didn't read it yet.
The so-called new atheism, by which he means the recent number of books that have come out by scientists or philosophers, like Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett. He also mentions Christopher Hitchens and Sam Harris. Basically, Stanley Fish, who is a law professor, by the way, as a background, and he claims that atheists just don't get it. That all these being very forward as an atheist is misguided, and that in particular atheists don't get the basic idea that, you know, believers have thought about all these objections against God before, and they have answers. And this is pretty stunning to me, at least, because I know that believers have thought about objections to their faith. I don't think they have particularly good answers. And so let me give you an example of what Fish says. So Fish brings up this interesting story. It's a story called The Pilgrim's Progress, in which the hero abandons wife and children because an evangelist tells him to run toward eternal life. And in the end, he says, Fish, within the story, the other believers do question why this guy is abandoning his family for a no particularly good reason, but they come up with an answer. They say, well, they conclude that the fool is in fact wiser than 7 men that can render a reason. In other words, it is a great idea to do things on blind faith despite any reason, and if you are in fact giving reasons for your behavior, you're really a fool. You're really the real fool. Now, if that qualifies as an answer, I don't know what the question was. It's very bizarre, and it is, however, a very common theme in religious writings, which is the idea that faith in itself is a virtue. Now, of course, nobody's ever explained to me, exactly why faith is a virtue, I suppose I have to take it on faith. There is no reasoning behind it. But it is bizarre because we do not apply that criterion in any other area of life. I mean, imagine if I were to tell to a friend, go to that car dealer and pick the first car that he tells you to buy on faith. Don't check on the data. Don't go on the website to check how the car is doing, and nothing of the sort. Just go on faith. Well, nobody in his right mind would do anything like that. We don't make decisions that way in any other area of life. Somehow we're supposed to be completely abandoning any normal behavior when it comes to religion. That's one of the things that Fish is saying atheists are missing. That we don't understand the importance or the relevance of faith. Well, I suppose that's true. I don't understand the relevance of faith, but that doesn't make it a good argument on Fish's part. He has to go on, however, and give you sort of the other side of the same coin. He has to say also that science itself is a faith. Because if you don't get there, then of course you don't understand why faith is such a good thing and reason is not really that good, or as good as we think. So Fish has to make the argument that, science itself is based on assumptions. And that's true. Science is based on assumptions. Let me give you an example. Every scientist that I know is a realist. A realist not in the sense of being a pragmatic person, although scientists tend to be pragmatic people. But it's a realist in the sense that scientists in general accept the philosophical notion of realism. In philosophy, realism is the idea that there is in fact a real physical world out there. That Ellen Johnson is not a figment of my imagination, neither is Dennis over here.
Much to your disappointment, I'm sure. But
in the second case, sure.
Yes.
Now, this is an assumption that it's called, as I said, realism, which cannot be tested within science. There's no scientific test, there's no empirical test for the idea of realism. Typically people that are against this idea that realism cannot be tested say, oh, sure, I can test it. I can get up and slap you in the face and you'll feel it real. That's missing the point, because I could be imagining also being slapped in the face. I could be imagining feeling the pain and so on and so forth. There is no answer to the question of realism. You just have to accept it in faith. It is true. It's an assumption. On the other hand, it is a very reasonable assumption, because without it, you're simply not going to have a functional life. It's not that just scientists do it. Everybody does it. Suppose that Stanley Fish's little car, I assume he has a car, breaks down the next time that he tries to get to work. And what does he do? He doesn't go to his preacher. He doesn't think of a supernatural event, unless his ego is that big. What he does is he calls the mechanic. First of all, he starts checking if is there gas inside the tank, is there everything is working, the electrical system is working, and so on and so forth. Now, suppose that the mechanic doesn't find a reason for the car breaking down. I bet that Fish would simply assume, reasonably, I think, that there must have been a natural mechanical cause for his car breaking down. His mechanic is either too incompetent to find it, or there is not enough information available. He's going to junk the car and get a new one. He's not going to all of a sudden make a leap of faith and say, no, I believe that this is the result of a supernatural event. So the fact that scientists do accept realism as an assumption to what they do, I suppose you could construe that as being a matter of faith, but this is sort of commonsensical faith. This is something that you have to do if you want to live your life as a normal human being.
we simply have no choice.
You have no choice. On the other hand, making the other kind of leap of faith, the sort of leap of faith that a religious person does, of course you have a choice. Because there it's really not necessary to live your life, your everyday life. And proof of the matter is, of course, that there's millions of people around the world who do not make that leap of faith. So there is a parallel in that sense, but it's a special parallel between science and religion. To really claim that science is a matter of faith in the same sense as religion is a matter of faith is to make a really intellectually dishonest argument, I think.
And how often do we hear people saying to us, atheists have more faith than a believer? It
Right.
takes more faith to be an atheist.
Right. The religion of atheism, the religion of science,
Well,
which is so absurd.
Oh, what is behind this need to define us as, a religion? They have to do that, but
Perhaps what's behind it is the realization to some extent that their own position is not tenable.
Yeah.
That it's not
Yeah,
real.
well, they can't win the argument, so then
So
they
you
try
bring
to
it down.
include
Bring down your
us
Yeah.
in,
Yeah.
include us
drag us down
into
to their level.